let me ask you this.
My guys, right?
I know that we both enjoyed the race. The racing was good. Mm-hmm. Does it bother you at all that, again, this race was determined by somebody getting stuck in somebody's dirty air? Because that bothers me. Granted, there's going to be just a little bit of bias here because I wanted to see Tyler Reddick win the race. I was rooting for Tyler to win the race. I was, cheering him on as he was running him down. So with that being said, there may be some bias here, but it frustrates me when you see guys be able to just block, for lack of a better term, but not even blocking with their car. Like, they're not putting themselves in harm's way because they know that the guy's not going to be able to get to them. Back in the day, if you wanted to block somebody, it was your car you had to block them with, not the air, because you could run up behind somebody and move them out of the way if they kept blocking you. And I think Reddick would have been able to do that in the old car. But
you talking about the Gen 6?
No, the Gen 4
the Gen 6 was worse than this.
The old car. But it's just every form of racing right now is struggling. I mean, F1 is...
Yeah, they had a great race on Saturday, didn't they?
I didn't even watch it, but like F1 is...
Max Verstappen won by 42 laps.
Well, and I'll have something to say about that here in a minute, but F1's impossible to watch for me now because it's not racing. It's, whoever qualifies the best probably going to win the race. And if it's not Max Verstappen, it's Max Verstappen's teammate that wins, or it's one of other, the Ferrari cars. IndyCar, a little bit better than F1, but still, it's qualify well. You're probably going to run well. You're probably going to be able to block people with aero, and you're probably going to win the race as long as you don't have any mistakes. NASCAR, I don't think should be that way. Now, I'm not saying that the whole race was that way, but at the end of the race, the best car didn't win. And Tyler Reddick should have won the race. And it's frustrating to see that the guy that he just doesn't he doesn't have an opportunity.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. He didn't catch him until with 3 or 4 to go. So it's not like he was on his ass for 20 laps because he just could never get around him.
So that's fair, but if you remember with 5 or 6, 7 to go, somewhere in that last 10 laps, he was closing on him, and Kyle blocked him, and he lost a couple tenths. I think they both ran the top, and Reddick lost a couple. Or maybe they both ran the middle with 8 to go, something like that. And Kyle took his line away. He fell back. And then I think that next corner, Kyle tried to take his line away again, but Reddick went to the bottom and kind of gained a little bit back on him. But he was there. And, Kyle Larson had the best car all day. I'm not saying he didn't deserve to win the race. But that race should not races should not be determined by the leader blocking second place with air. That second place can't get to the guy's bumper because he's just running the same line. I think if Reddick wanted to get up to him and push him out of the way, Reddick should have that opportunity. Or if Reddick wants to run right up to his ass and get him loose by packing air on his rear, which is what it used to be, that's the way I think these races should play out. Now, I'm just kind of complaining. I don't have a way to fix it. NASCAR wouldn't listen to me anyway. But it's just there's a little bit of me that kind of wishes that the race ended a little bit differently because I think Tyler Reddick didn't. Second place doesn't have a fair shot to catch the leader in those situations, especially on mile and a halves.
I don't. It does bother me. It does, to an extent. But I don't want them messing with this car so much to where all of a sudden the racing, other than the finish, is awful. You can't pass people because of some other thing they change. And then the end of the race, if you have somebody catching somebody, they might be able to pass them. But then the rest of the race is god awful. I don't want them to.
I get what you're saying.
To do that, but I get you. I get what you're saying. And
well,
but that's just how. I think because there's way less horsepower in the car now, and the tires are bigger. The way the car is just made now, it's not as bad as Gen 6, but I get you. I understand what you're coming about.
The Aero's just, it's unfortunate because unless you're one of the top 3 or 4 cars, if you get back in the pack, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, or like you said, the 20, he came back up through the field a couple times. 24. He had one of the better cars. The 24 might have been the best car. We never really got to see him because every time he got to the front, he got sent to the back for something. And, you know, they're mired in the back, and you just can't work your way back up to the front. I know I mentioned this last year on a podcast. I can't remember which one, but
the Highline?
Yeah.
Well,
I was watching.
You did say on a podcast.
Yeah.
I
said on the podcast.
You said a podcast.
I did say on a episode of the podcast.
Yeah, that's what you should have said.
I was watching I think it was 2001. Maybe it was 2000 Atlanta.
Dale Senior won.
I fell asleep before I finished the race. I can't remember that's why I'm saying I don't remember what year it was. But Dale Jr. was in the race. And there was, I think in the first 20 laps, there was like 8 different leaders. I mean, Matt Kenseth led some laps and then fell off. Dale Jr. led some laps and then fell off. And Matt Kenseth led some laps and fell off. And then I think Mark Martin was up there and fell off. Dale Jarrett was up there and fell off. And these guys kept just, kind of jumping each other. Mm-hmm. And you're never going to see that anymore. And it's frustrating because that's the type of racing I want to see. But
and to be fair, Kyle Larson, with these 1.5 mile tracks since this next gen car has been introduced, we've had some of that, not to that extent, but usually we don't have a driver go out there and dominate 1.5 miles like we've seen in the Gen 6 era, like with Truex, a lot of times with Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. A lot of times, like I remember 2022 Charlotte, you had Chase Briscoe leading at one point, you had Kyle Larson leading at one point, you had Daniel Suarez leading at one point, you had Kyle Busch leading at one point.
You had Chris Buescher flipping.
Yeah, like you had a whole bunch of leaders throughout the race, so it's better with this next gen car. No, you won't get to what you're talking about in the early 2000s. Like you'll never see that again unless they just go back to the Gen 4 car. But I don't think it's a huge problem. It is a slight problem. Like you said, if you got in second place, just can't get past the first place car. But what I say to that is figure a fucking way out to get around them. If you have to do what you got to do. Now, I'm not saying wreck them because I don't think that's right.
You can't get to him.
You could get to him. He got to him. He just made a mistake once he got to him. Don't make mistakes.
That's fair.
If you go to the middle there, when Kyle goes to the bottom, you get to run all 4.
Yeah, I think
you can go down the inside of them. Then next thing you know, you're side by side going into 1 on the last lap.
I think you're right. I think it was Reddick's mistake that didn't win him. He would have won the race if he didn't follow him in there, in my opinion. However, I think if he would have been able to pass him with 5 to go, he would have won by 2 seconds. I think he was that much better than him at the end of the race.
You're probably right.
And the air just didn't let him. Didn't let him do it. But congratulations, Kyle Larson. You do what you got to do. It's not his fault. You got to do what you got to do to win the race. And aero blocking is just part of the game now.